Hello again, everybody. Hey, this is a special edition of Banter with Bob and Dan. You know, banter is about two people with different opinions discussing something or going at it and trying to prove their point, and whether it's calmly or emotionally. And that leads us to why this is a special edition, because my banter partner, Bob Sherwood, Robert J Sherwood, has just released his new book, Word Wars. You see it there over my shoulder. Word Wars. And we're going to learn more about it, but it represents Bob's over 30 years of being involved as an expert witness. So, Bob, always good to be here with you. And so we're just going to talk about...
Good to be here with you, Dan.
Yes, indeed. So you wrote this book, Word Wars. And how long did it take you to write the book? 4 months, 6 months? Of course, you've been writing it over 30 years period, probably.
Well, I wrote the outline about 3 or 4 years ago. And then I started adding to the outline. I had different people read it to make sure I was going to cover the right materials. And then I finished it last month.
No kidding. So give us kind of an overview or an outline of Word Wars. You know, even that title, that's just a priceless title, Word Wars. Tell us how you chose that title and an overview of the book.
Well, I had several titles, but I picked Word Wars because that's what litigation is all about. Litigation is all about the law. The laws are written with words. When you go to court, it's a war of words. So for example, I was in one case, a big case, where the entire case revolved around the definition of the word user, U-S-E-R. So you get some pretty nuanced litigation.
Fascinating. You know, fascinating. And that whole concept kind of leads to a little background. As Bob's background, as many of you know, if you watch Banter or if you watched this before, Bob was involved in Silicon Valley on the board of directors of multiple companies, successful. So technology has always been his strength. He was a professor at the University of Kansas. He's got 2 master's degrees, one in engineering and one in business. So he certainly got a background, but you're not an attorney, right? You're not an attorney, Bob.
No, I'm not an attorney, and you bring up an interesting question, and that is why I wrote the book in the first place. Why did I take the time to do it? Was it a job of filling my ego, or basically writing about interesting things? Well, the answer to that was yes, but the main reason is what I call it's a gap filler. A gap filler.
Explain that, a gap filler.
Well, there's a gap, and I'll give you an example. If you were to examine the curriculum of law schools across the United States, you would find no course on expert witness training, hiring, deposing, etc. They don't give any course on it. The lawyers aren't trained on it.
So if I'm a lawyer or I'm going to law school, I'm a law student, I would want to get this book, because if I'm going to utilize in my future that. But you're saying that there's really not any training out there for...
No, but to kind of work off of your point, the audience that I wrote the book for was not lawyers.
They should know it, but more so it's the experts out there, right?
No, the experts should buy the book, lawyers should buy the book, but the audience is people, plaintiffs and defendants in litigation. Because plaintiffs hire lawyers, lawyers hire experts. Plaintiffs and defendants, for example, they think the lawyer can argue their case. The lawyer can't. What they see in the movies is not in real life. In real life, the lawyers cannot advocate for their client because they're obviously biased. They're getting paid by their client. They can ask questions of experts. So experts are really the key part of most litigation. And let me just give you a few numbers. There are 20 million litigation cases filed a year. 20 million.
20 million. Wow.
There are approximately, depending on your estimates, 10 to 20% of those cases require experts. So that means there's 1 million to 4 million experts required every year on cases.
Wow.
there's some studies on this. For example, one of the most popular studies is from the California system. And the California trial system analyzed 560 trials. And in those trials, the average was 3 experts per trial.
Wow.
So the experts are a vital part. So now when a plaintiff or defendant, let's say you and I hire a lawyer, and the lawyer almost always is going to tell us, Mr. Sherwood, you have a great case. I can't guarantee anything. Okay, but the lawyer then has to hire who? Some experts. And you as a plaintiff or defendant, someone who is involved in the litigation, need to be involved and understand the role of the experts.
So that the expert
The
either
experts may
adds
decide whether
value.
you win.
Yeah, go ahead.
Whether you win or lose your case, right?
So if I'm going to be a plaintiff and sue someone or a defendant,
Right.
I should know what I'm going to be up against, not just the attorneys or the case, but what an expert witness might bring to the table.
You may be better off before you engage your attorney to engage an expert, somebody who has testified in trial, and go through your case with them, because they'll tell you what probably is going to happen in trial in terms of testimony. Because they can say, oh, that business practice is this. Now, they're not quoting the law. They're quoting how an expert would view your case. And the expert's under oath. So the attorney can't, in the courtroom, argue your case. In fact, if you watch some movies, sometimes an attorney will object and they'll say, oh, the attorney is providing testimony. That's arguing your case. They can't really argue your case in court, unlike the movies. They have to use discovery, use documents, and ask good questions to experts and hire good experts. Now, remember this, I've done over 100 cases. I've never found another expert that agrees with me when they're working for the other side. We always disagree.
Thus,
that
the
tells
banter,
you something
right?
about
That's
the
why
whole business, right?
You banter.
I write a report. I work on it. It's 50 pages long. I maybe charge $50,000 for that report. It's well documented. Attorneys review it before I file it, but I sign it and adopt it as my testimony, not the lawyer's testimony, my testimony as an expert.
Wow.
Now, the other side will hire their expert. And guess what he thinks? Exactly the opposite of what I think.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. This is why
becomes word war.
It's a word war, right? I've been called everything you can think about by the other expert in their report. I try not to be that personally attacking, but some experts will just get personal. They won't even look at the evidence. They'll say, well, the expert is this, the expert is that, shouldn't be allowed in court, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, again, is that in all these cases, the expert is testifying under oath. The lawyer isn't. I mean, frankly, a lawyer could lie.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying they will or they won't, but I'm just saying they can because they're not under oath. If they ask questions, they're not under oath. They're not under oath to interpret your answers, but the expert is. That's why the expert's testimony is the leverage for winning or losing your case.
Wow. Wow. If you're watching this, you want to go right now to Amazon and look up Robert J Sherwood Word Wars and get it, whether you're an attorney, a plaintiff, a defendant. But bigger than that, here's where I really think, Bob, you've got a home run here. We probably haven't thought about it. You're an author. You've written 4 or 5 novels, fiction novels. You've written about 14 different how-to. You tell people about Silicon Valley, how to do public speaking, technical terms, et cetera, that are all out there on Amazon. But this book, I think, could be and should be the home run, because you are engaged also in training, because other authors, I'm an author, right? And there are millions of authors in America that are experts in a field. Well, you are in technology, as you started out saying.
But let's put some numbers on it. If there's 20 million litigations filed a year, and every litigation has a plaintiff and defendant. Now, there's 40 million people at least involved in litigation.
Yeah.
Every year. Now, that doesn't account domestic abuse cases. That's just like civil litigation, right? And so this means if you're out there right now thinking about hiring a lawyer, thinking that you have a case, you may be better off hiring an expert first. Because the expert's going to tell you what he can say under oath. You might say to the expert, well, can you opine on the fact that I conform to all the business practices of the chemical engineering industry? And the expert should probably say, well, if we knew what you actually did, I might be able to do it. But if I'm asked, I can only testify in what are the real business practices. Can you testify that what I did was proper? Yes, I can. Your lawyer can't, but the expert can. The expert can say, I've examined the practices of the plaintiff or the defendant, whichever it might be, and I conclude, in my opinion, as an expert in that field, that the plaintiff and or the defendant, whoever I'm working for, has conformed to all the business practices in his field.
Wow.
I'll give you another example. I was hired to evaluate the portfolio of a major venture capital firm in San Francisco. They had made 10 investments. Their investors had each put in $35 million into their fund.
Wow.
At the end of 3 years, they were losing money. So one of the investors, even though that investor said they would never sue the venture capital firm, did. My job was to evaluate their portfolio, evaluate their procedures for making second round investments, and make a determination whether or not their procedures for second round investments were different than the procedures for the first round investments. And the answer was yes. As it turned out, all their second round investments were investments in first round investments they made that weren't doing so well. So they used the money from the second round to shore up the first round. Now, they probably would have lost the case based on my testimony, except that one of their portfolio investments was Google. And Google went public and everybody was happy. The investor, made money and everybody left. But the point is that in that case, the law is the law in terms of securities, but an expert makes the determination as to whether or not the practices of the venture capital firm conform to normal practices.
Yeah.
That's folks, what experts do.
Special edition of banter, and there's no greater banter arena than a courtroom. And Bob Sherwood, 30 years being an expert witness, as you said, well over 100 cases. You mentioned, I know you do some training and to encourage people. The average, you've had where you were hired by attorneys. You've had cases where you made a large amount of money, but the average has always been about 47, 45, 47,000.
The average for expert witnesses on a typical case is about $50,000.
So if I'm an expert,
I did a project with Yahoo years ago when they were suing Google and some other firms because they owned the pay-per-click patent. Every time you go to a place and you click on something and that's an ad, well, Yahoo owned that patent. And my fee for that was over $250,000.
Yeah, and that's such a fascinating
story. That went on for several years, like many cases do, right?
Because every day in America,
charge anywhere. Pardon me.
Every day in America, how many people go to Google? And the interesting story is, you were representing the underdog, Yahoo. They were suing Google, and I don't know if we can share, but I believe in the end, the underdog whose attorneys hired you
it's
was
public
the winner.
Knowledge. Yahoo. I think Yahoo received 1 million shares of Google stock. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is in that particular time frame, Yahoo was bigger than Google. But today, Google, of course, is much, much bigger than Yahoo. A lot of people that are younger people don't even remember Yahoo was the search engine of choice in 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. And that pay-per-click patent was developed by a small company in Pasadena, California, who eventually sold it to Yahoo for $1.6 billion. So anyway, that's the kind of cases experts get involved in. and that I've gotten involved in, and they're all very interesting. The fees can run anywhere from, experts charge anywhere from $200 to as much as $1,000 an hour.
Wow. So if I've written a
And
book
most,
and I'm an expert, I should reach out to Bob Sherwood and say, "Hey, Bob," and then you offer some training of the best of you are. I would consider you the expert of experts because of this book. I mean, in my homework and looking in various places, there are some small, but there's no one with your background, your knowledge, and that's written a book. This book, Word Wars, available on Amazon, that really gives. I mean, and folks, if you follow on, you'll see more on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and other places. You'll be seeing Word Wars pop up, and when you look at the table of contents, it's kind of the how-to. Here's the questions. And Bob, tell us about, you got some training.
The book was not written as an expert witness training guide. It's primarily describes stories of expert witness in real life engagements, right? So if a person read that carefully, they would learn certain things from what I describe in the book, right? And I do have in the book, I have actual depositions that I was under, the questions and the answers. So there are ways to answer questions where under oath you can be truthful, but still not give up the case to the other side. Now, I have gotten people into the expert witness business, and the way I do that is they come to me, they say what their expertise is. I say, okay, I can help you. There are 4 different brokers in the United States that actually help lawyers find experts. I can help expert get involved in one of those brokers, but I can help them in the interview process. The expert witness interview from a lawyer is fairly precise, and people have to prepare for it. I've talked to other experts, and experts that do not do well will tell me, well, I didn't even prepare for that interview. I just winged it. I usually prepare anywhere from 4 to 8 hours for an interview. I find out the background of the lawyers, the background of the plaintiff or the defendant. A lot of times there's public information on the litigation available, what the issues are. So I go in and look at those. I prepare for the interview so that I know something about what the case is about and whether or not I, as an expert, is going to fit that case. This is very important. So the answer is, could I train experts? Yes. Now, there's an issue of liability. And that's why any training I ever provide an expert has an engagement agreement, just like they would agree to a lawyer engagement, because the liability is if I train you in a certain way and you use that in court and it doesn't work, you cannot come back at me. It's like you can't usually come back at your lawyer for those kind of things. Lawyers don't provide very good training because they can't be as forthright with another expert that I can be. And I can tell them things that, don't be intimidated by the other expert. The other attorney. They'll try to intimidate you. They'll challenge you. So you have to be prepared for those challenges. You got to be prepared not to be intimidated. Remember, I tell experts, you always know more about the expert material than the lawyer does. He doesn't know. That's why you're the expert.
Yeah.
Don't ever be intimidated by a question where it sounds like the lawyer is saying, oh, I know this or I know that. They don't. All they can do in testimony is ask you questions.
Yeah. So I'm an author, or I'm thinking about writing a book, but I am an expert, let's say, in some field. I'm Jimmy Jones, Sally Smith. I'm an expert in something. Obviously, your books that you've written and your background in Silicon Valley and board of directors, and you've been an entrepreneur and you handled things. So if I were Jimmy Jones, Sally Smith, and I thought maybe I want to learn, could I be an expert witness? And just they reach out to you, and maybe have a little conference, consult with you, right?
Sure, they can. Now, but let me also make this point. Expert witnesses can be experienced plumbers and experienced electricians. It's not just people that have big, heavy intellectual or tech backgrounds. There's all sorts of suits about, I've hired a plumber. I gave him $200,000. My house fell apart. I sued the plumber. I need an expert to do what? To determine whether or not that plumber followed the best practices for plumbing.
Yeah,
So
that's
for that, I
beautiful.
reach out to an experienced plumber. And I say, this
Experts.
guy started undoing pipes without even a plan. Is that a best practice? Well, probably not. So what I mean is, experts are required in almost every field: sales, marketing, finance, plumbing, electrician, general contracting. Today, anything in the cyber area requires experts. So you remember, going back to the numbers, if we have 20 million lawsuits and we need 3 million to 4 million experts, those guys aren't all going to be like me, experts in internet advertising and things of that nature. They're going to be experts in other fields. There are some brokers, that's a person who helps lawyers find experts that specialize in certain fields, like doctors, or specialize in insurance. My gosh, if you're an expert in insurance or real estate,
Yeah.
I hired a realtor. They did blah, blah. They failed. I lost $50,000 on my house. I'm suing the realtor. Well, what do you need? You need an expert in a realtor area to determine whether or not your realtor followed the best practices.
And like
That's
you said
common.
earlier,
Yeah, it's
people
best
should
practice.
maybe reach out to an expert in an area before they hire an attorney. They're thinking, I wonder if I should sue on this. I'm pretty mad. I want to sue. Well, instead of hiring the attorney that might charge you $5,000 right up front, hire the expert and might say, okay, let's have 2 or 3 visits for, less than that,
Sure.
and consult.
And you've nailed it. In fact, that's why this book, in some respects, changes the whole platform of how people think about litigation. If you call a lawyer and they want a retainer of 15 grand, and by the way, I'm not criticizing lawyers. This is the way litigation works. Most lawyers will say, yeah, you have a case. They've broken the law. But that doesn't help him in court unless he can get an expert witness to say that what happened violated business practices or violated contractual area. They can't ask the expert, hey, Mr. Sherwood, did Joe violate the law? I can't answer that question. Only the judge can. But if they ask me a question, did they follow best practices in their industry, I can say, no, I've looked at what they've done. They didn't follow best practices. The plumber didn't use the right tool. The realtor that didn't set up your house, didn't put the sign up right, didn't put their information on the sign, lied on the sales document. You see, so what I'm really saying is that you nailed it. It's probably a lot more beneficial, more economic, if you're thinking of litigation, to find an expert in your field and talk to them about it. I can help you do that if you want. If it's close to my field, I can do that. So that's a game changer. This book is a whole game changer. It's really saying, hey, who's under oath in the courtroom? The lawyers? No. Who is under oath? Who must tell the truth or perjure themselves? The expert.
Yeah.
That's why when you look at the data on cases, how many experts, I just quoted California, 3 experts per case. Now, wait a minute. That's 3 experts on each side. That's 6 experts. 3 experts for the plaintiff, 3 experts for the defendant. So what I mean is, it's the expert that's going to help you win your case. I love lawyers. I work with, 70 law firms have hired me. I always tell them the same thing what I'm telling you now in this interview, that as an expert, I want to make sure that what I'm going to say is going to be helpful to your client. And if I can't say that, I don't want to be an expert on your case.
Yeah, folks, we've been talking with Bob Sherwood, my friend. The Banter is our normal program, and Banter is about differing opinions that we sometimes have. But on this book, Word Wars, this is about bantering in a courtroom. And if you're thinking about being an expert, or you are an expert and maybe a low-end expert, not getting enough cases and want to rise up, reach out. You see the information how to get a hold of Bob right there on the screen, webtalkwithbob.com. When you see the information how to get a hold of him, reach out, because you can talk to the expert for experts. Bob Sherwood, Robert J
Sure.
Sherwood, Word Wars.
If you've got 8,000 or 10,000 hours in your field, which means you're probably 40 years old, maybe 50. I don't care what field you're in, insurance, electricity, plumbing, contracting, there's probably a demand for people with knowledge. And with a little bit of training, you can become an expert. So this book has two things that I think changes the format or the view of litigation. One is that the expert is somebody you should talk to early in your litigation area. And secondly, if you're knowledgeable yourself, you too can become an expert. It's a great gig. I mean, frankly, other than traveling to trial, most of your work can be done remotely. I've read documents while I was on the beach in Cancun, and you get paid for that too, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, it's a great gig for people that have some experience in their industry. It's not a good gig for people that are 20 to 30. They don't have enough hours in their industry. But once you get above 45 or 50, you probably do.
Yes. And at an average
I got started only by accident.
At an
A
average
friend of mine, I had a call from a law firm. They were looking for an expert that had both business and technology experience. A company had sued Xerox. And they asked me, this is actually in the book also, this story. I was asked to review all the business plans. And remember, this was my first case. I didn't even know what experts did at that point because I didn't have any training and the lawyers weren't that good at training me. But anyway, so I was asked to review all the business plans, all the information from the company formation. And as I'm reading these business plans, sure enough, in one of the business plans, the founder said, we're going to build a big successful company, but if we don't, we're just going to sue Xerox. So anyway, those are the kind of things that people probably shouldn't put in business plans. And sure enough, they weren't successful and they sued Xerox.
Well,
and just to be more specific, my job was make a determination. Could this company have become $100 million a year company if Xerox would have sold them a patented part? That's how specific some of those litigation cases get.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I know you shared over the years things about email and different technology. The companies you've worked with are some of the largest big household names that we all tune into every single day. And I don't know if we can share some of those. Is that, you mentioned Google and Yahoo, but I know you've been in the courtroom one side or the other with Facebook and Microsoft, Dell, Walmart. A lot of people have reached out to you. So folks, there you have it. You want to go and this book is like almost 300 pages, right, Bob? So I mean, it's not some little.
Sure, I keep a copy with me all
right
the
there.
time.
Show,
right.
Yeah, the side.
Right.
Show the side. I mean, that is not some thin.
Long.
That's not some thin, cheap book that just a few thoughts put together. Bob has put chapter after chapter in the table of contents. I went through it and I thought, man, it covers everything. Word Wars, get it, and then reach out. Keep an eye on Bob. And Bob, it's always great to be with you. Glad we can agree.
Let me add one thing, Dan. I don't mean to interrupt, but I updated the book because I worked over time. So the last chapter, it shows how an expert will use the new AI models for depositions and expert reports. And I actually do one that's in the book. So it's a real life example of how an expert would use the AI model to write an expert report. I actually do the AI model and I publish the whole report or parts of it in the book. So it's not just the old times, it's the good times too, what's going forward in terms of AI models. And experts have to become knowledgeable now about expert reports, AI models, large language models, and things of that nature. That's all I got, Dan.
30 years ago to the AI of today, you cover it. And you see how to get a hold of Bob here on the screen. Word Wars. Bob, thanks. And I'm sure we'll be back covering some other stories here. And folks, if you want to get some great training on how to be an expert, reach out to Bob. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Dan. Have a good day.